I would like to call to order the Rockland Fire Protection District Board of Trustees meeting for May 13th, 2019. Roll call. Trustee Snowden? Here. Trustee Grum? Here. Trustee Rogers, aye. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have consideration of the board minutes for April 8th and May 2nd. Does anybody have any comments, questions, or changes on either set of meetings?
Yeah, there's just one change on the April 8th minutes, number 5, part B, where it says John Ross, it should be Don Russ.
Oh, okay. I also have a change on G on page 3, where it says Trustee Snowden noted several entries on the appraisal seemed to be inaccurate. He had also indicated at that time that he had come across that 4 days prior, I believe.
Actually, I never said, because I don't know, I think I probably said a few days.
Okay, I'd like it noted there that he had the information a few days prior to the meeting.
I think the video will show that the statement was 4 days. The question was asked when you knew about it, and your response was 4 days
No,
earlier.
I'm sure it was a few days, because
Okay, a few days is,
That's nice we have a video.
okay. You want to do these individually?
You can do them together.
Okay, I request a motion to approve the minutes as amended. Motion to approve?
Second?
No, okay, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. Public comment, the district allows time allocated for those who would like an opportunity to address the fire district. Trustees, on any matters not listed on the agenda. Do we have any public comment?
I have an announcement to make.
Okay?
Based on the family of the Issel family. Pat Issel passed away yesterday, early evening, Sunday, May 12th. I did speak with the family last night and this morning, so I did get the okay to speak on behalf of them. So if no one knows who Pat Issel was, she was a very highly person of the Norwood Fire Station, and I will stay Norwood Fire Station still. Her husband was Chief, I'm going to do this, Chief Bob Issel. She was also a very loving mother of Chief Kevin Issel and Deputy Mike Issel. She passed away comfortably, unexpectedly, but she is in her arms of her lovely husband, Bob Issel, right now. There are no arrangements made at this time. They're still working at it. Just keep them in their prayers and your thoughts. My condolences to the entire family, friends of Norwood, because she was also a beloved resident of Norwood. Rest in peace. She was also known as Mama Issel, Grandma Issel, to the entire firefighters of Norwood. Rest in peace, Grandma Issel.
I think I speak on behalf of the entire board that we send our condolences to the entire Issel family, as both Bob and Kevin and Mike were long time members and contributors to the Rockland Fire Protection District and Norwood Fire Department. Any other comments? Bob? No. Anything else?
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I know I spoke for an
Go
announcement.
ahead.
All right. Brian, you know my name?
Yeah.
Carl, I just want to say thank you for the last 2.5 years of fighting for the Norwood Fire Station. and supporting the upcoming board members. The last couple of weeks were hard for you, but I commend you of sticking up. It wasn't your fault, because there were many residents, and I, as a Lake Forest resident, knew that this was not a 1970 building. To the rest of the board members, it's everybody's responsibility to read the appraisal. If you had a question of when this building was made, you should have seen it. This building wasn't made in 1970. We all knew it. Everybody should have crossed their T's and dotted their I's and not pointed fingers at everybody. You guys can make your excuses, you guys can make your comments that you're blindsided to the new potential owner of the business towards the end of the meeting. But you can't point fingers because there were numerous people that were talking about when this building was made and where the original building was. It was everybody's fault. It was the appraisal's fault for not looking into it at the Lake County. So, everybody should be apologizing for Carl for speaking up. And it was no way that those bids would be able to be held and not open during that board meeting, that special board meeting. So those bids, no matter what, needed to be open and not held for the next special board meeting to see what would happen. So those special meeting had to resume no matter what, Mr. Rogers. So another bid would have to have been placed if they needed to or not. So that's all I have to say. I hope one day you guys will realize what you guys did to Norwood.
Okay, any other comments?
Yes, I'd
Okay.
like to speak.
Okay, could you give the, your...
Brian, my name is Ron Lamb. I'm also a resident of Lake Forest. And I would like to provide a commendation on behalf of Mr. Grum and Mr. Rogers and to Brian and the entire board for its courage to do what was unpopular and which was a complicated process to go through. It takes enormous courage to fight through the type of visceral dissidence that was part of this process. Teresa, contrary to what you said, what I'm going to tell you is, Carl, you had a moral and legal responsibility to have shared what you knew prior to that meeting going. And the definition of a trustee is someone that carries the legal and the moral responsibility to do so.
Whatever, Ron.
Ma'am, we gave you all the time
I
to say what
understand,
you'd
but he
like.
mentioned
Okay,
my name.
okay, all right, but please extend him the same courtesy he extended you and we extended you. Thank you so much.
Scores of hours were spent preparing those bids. And you knew at any time prior would have been the appropriate time to have shared that information. I felt very, very concerned for the effort that was made by both of those people. And as a trustee, what you did was potentially let down the citizens and the residents who might not have benefited from both of those bids being withdrawn.
I would make the comment
I'm not finished. If I was going to be a person who had made a bid, I would be in a position right now to file suit against this board for what I feel was not the proper handling of that at the time and would have held those back. Because essentially what ended up happening was a public auction occurred with information that carried forward. Now Brian has carried you guys forward and I have the utmost trust in him saying the right thing. I'm just saying what I would do if I had spent those scores of hours doing that. In addition, what I'm going to say to you is personal. To carry that smirk that you did when that was brought up, in my mind, is reprehensible. And there's some motive
that was driving when and how and why, and apparently others knew that as well. And that, in my mind, was not only illegal, but it was morally reprehensible. I'm finished.
Having my integrity questioned by people of this sort because I interfered with their plans, I find to be somewhat laughable. In fact, I kind of wear it as a badge of honor.
Okay. Any other public comments?
Yeah, Ed Whitehead. So, on day one, remember when I asked you guys about conversations you had with Aaron Lawler, Mike Rummel regarding the department, and you both denied ever having any conversations? I know you're not going to say anything, but it's on the video. So I'm here again to make the offer. If you would like to apologize for the multiple lies that you have told to the community over the years, this is a perfect opportunity. And watching the video from that last meeting, Bob, for you to question Carl and call Carl unethical, it's laughable. I don't know what else to say. It's laughable. So all I can say is thank God we are almost done with you two. And I want everybody to remember, we are here tonight because of the man who personally stated that he is, I want to remember his line, gay, HIV positive, mentally ill, drug addicted, and I understand is under investigation for possible misappropriation of county
We need
funds.
to watch those comments.
They're not my comments, they are his words.
We need to watch those comments.
Okay? So, we know why we're here. And I just think that to tout that you two guys are the greatest thing that ever happened is a mistake. Because you're not. We're almost done. Thank goodness. That's all.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, having none prior to the chief's report, I have a few comments I'd like to make. I'm going to take some time to attend the Lake Forest and Libertyville board meetings. With no disrespect to the two chiefs that are here, I was going to tell the other two chiefs that I wanted to thank both of them, along with the Village of Lake Bluff and Libertyville Fire Protection District and their boards, for all the time, effort, and work that everybody put in researching this and moving forward. After 6 years of being here, here's kind of where I'm at. From the beginning of sitting on this board, it was clear to me that the board was here to levy money and then basically sit back, and the fire department was gonna run the show here. And these are my opinions. These are my thoughts. These are no reflection on Trustee Snowden or on Trustee Grow. As I moved along, I found many different things within the firehouse disturbing that I tried to talk about in the firehouse. And I'll bring up the one that always stuck in my mind the most. I stopped in here one Saturday night just to see how everybody was doing when I was early on, and thought that, you know, that there was maybe a team effort here. And when I came in, there was a pickup truck in the bay that the front end was jacked up and it was all tore out. And I don't know who the firefighter was, but it was one of the firefighters, and he was doing a complete reconstruction on the front end of his truck. And I asked him what he was doing, and he told me, and he said, "We're allowed to do that." I said, "Okay." And there was a young lady sitting on the floor, and I introduced myself to her, and I said, "Who are you?" And she said that she was that gentleman's girlfriend. And I asked her how her week was, or something cordial. And all of a sudden, coming out of this door over here, was a small boy on a small bicycle riding through the fire department. And I said, "Who is he?" And she said, "He's my son." And I said, "Well, I don't know that that's safe for him to do that." So I had brought it up to our chief later, and it was just disregarded. It didn't matter. And the liability there just seemed a lot. And there were repeated instances like this, and what I felt, and I brought it to both the chief and the deputy chief's attention more than once, I'm gonna say conduct unbecoming of what I thought should be going on here. Over the next 6 years of being here, never once, not one time, did anybody from the public or fire department ask me to sit down and say, you know, I know you're considering looking at consolidation and you're looking at different things, can we give you your input? More than once I said to Chief Harlow, Chief, if there's ever anything you want to talk about, just give me a call, I'd be happy to sit down and discuss it. That just simply didn't happen. And what I learned very quickly, as soon as we discussed any of this with Libertyville or Lake Forest or Lake Bluff, is that the mob mentality that was coming at me at this meeting was, if you disagree with what we want, you're wrong. There was never ever any consideration that consolidation was right. There was never anybody who really wanted to sit down and talk about different ways. And in fact, I sat down three times. Once I met Miss O'Hara, just in the passing, about 3 years ago or more, and said, you know, I really think we should sit down and talk about the fire department at some time. That never went anywhere. I sat with Drew twice. The first time we sat in the village board meeting, I suggested the idea of a joint POP program, of pooling the Knollwood guys and the Lake Bluff guys together, and based on when we had calls, or the most popular times that we had calls between the two of us, that we staff the appropriate station. So we had a lot of calls over in the industrial park during the day, that maybe that was the time to staff this station. And I said, you know, the Lake Bluff guys could wear their uniforms, the Lake Knollwood guys could wear their uniforms, and that went nowhere. So then I met a second time with him and I said, listen, we answered 450 calls of yours. Can you throw us a bone? Can you give us something to help cover the costs? How about $50 a call? And the answer was, I'll get back to you. They never got back to me. On the other hand, both Chief Karani, Chief Siebert, Libertyville was in a little bit of a transition, so I did hear from the old village administrator once. I talked to Kelly Amade, I talked to Bob Kiley, and there was a constant call to come together and pull this thing all together. When I met with Lake Bluff, and not that anybody would believe Mike Rummel, because he was there, I said, let's all get together. Libertyville, Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, Knollwood, let's all come together and put this thing together into one project that everybody benefits from. And the answer was no. Lake Bluff did not want to be involved in it, and I completely respect that position. That was their call. The next thing that really honestly surprised me, and I'm still scratching my head with it, there was a time when I was really, really active in Knollwood Neighbors, and Knollwood Neighbors to me was the organization that just handled and worked on good things. And even when we had the issue of the school being sold, Knollwood Neighbors presented facts, and that was pretty much it. I don't believe, maybe once, maybe twice, but through this whole thing, I don't believe I commented once on public media in Knollwood Neighbors about what was going on. But boy, I took a thumping. And you know what? So be it. But I was just stunned at how Knollwood Neighbors, this community, would take that turn from, we will not take any position, to publishing ethics violations that were all dismissed, personal stuff that had really nothing to do with anything but me. But boy, like I said, I took a thumping. I jokingly said to somebody the other day, I got beat like a baby seal. That's probably an inappropriate thing to say. So as we kind of begin to wrap this up, I look at the reports we were just given, and we average about combined through the first months, we average 15 calls a month between Libertyville and Lake Forest, 1 call every other day, roughly. In the meantime, we've sold the assets to the building, and should the sale go through to Mr., I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, Kalugian? Not even close.
I don't care reading, I don't.
Right now, as of today, we have assets of $604,000. We have a sale on the building for $980,000 if it goes through and the next board follows up on it. The appraised value was $360,000. You pay off the mortgage. 630. 630. I apologize. 630. You pay off the mortgage, and you end up with slightly over $1 million cold hard cash in the bank, and a tax levy of another $600,000+ coming in. I feel like the incoming board is in very good financial conditions. I would like to as well thank both Trustee Grum and Trustee Snowden for their service. Bob's knowledge of the fire service and what things were and what things weren't, I think was a huge asset to us. Mr. O'Connor, I would like to personally thank you for everything you've done for this district, for your cool head and your solid legal advice, and for, during very emotional times, talking me off the ledge. It's much appreciated. The handling of the bids, and I'll direct this to you, Carl, and I mean this with all due respect. I just sincerely wish you had brought that forward earlier. I sincerely feel if the shoe were on the other foot and I had done something like that, there would have been an uproar to end all uproars. I think it was really unfair to the trustees, to the bidders. If you'd known about it, I really wish you had told us about it. It just would have been the right thing to do. You live 5 doors away from me. We've been friends for a long time. That friendship has certainly been damaged. I hope that this endeavor in the fire department was worth the friendship. I will tell you of everything that pains me the most. To the incoming trustees, this is my last remarks. Our treasurer has tendered her resignation. She has tendered her resignation because of the tone and tenor of the last several meetings of comments that were made by Mr. Malinowski. You as well are a neighbor. I wish you no ill. I wish you success. I think your comments were both inappropriate. I think they were basically smart-ass comments that you made over the last few meetings. And I hope that as you go forward, you take the advice of Brian as I did, and you listen and you have much success. Ms. Bernstein, I wish you as well all the success in the world. I hope you have much success here. If you find this is not your cup of tea, I would suggest to you to reconsider Mr. Russ and his financial background, which I think would be of a huge asset to this board going forward, considering you're going to have over $1 million in cold hard cash. Mr. Anderson, I'd like to thank you for the time you took and you spent with me and listened and looked at what was going on. I think that the board and this community are immensely fortunate to have you coming on this board. You not only are a businessman, you're a past fireman, and I think you get it. I think you understand it, and you already have a relationship with Lake Forest, and I'm assuming some with Lake Bluff, or with Libertyville, which I think will be a huge asset going forward. So to the three of you, I wish you success. That's pretty much it. From there, unless anybody has any more comments, I would like to move on to the chief's report.
I'd just like to make a quick statement,
Okay.
since everybody has accused me of numerous violations and predisposition of when I came on the board. When I came on, I told everyone here at the very first meeting that my intent on this board was to become familiar with the operations and the finances of this district, to look at how we functioned and whether or not it was the most economical and fiscally responsible for the residents of the district. That was my intent, and if I found that it was currently under the way they were operating was the best way to handle it, I was more than happy to support that and continue that. But I was determined to ask the questions, find the statistics, look at all the finances, and see what was available and what was our best choices. In doing so, I didn't just decide to pick one. I studied the situation. I researched other areas that had done similar things. I spoke to those involved in the closing of the Highwood Fire Station on how that occurred and what the results were and how it went. I spoke to several dozen chiefs, or a couple dozen chiefs in Lake County, asking their opinions as to what they saw and what their experiences were. Not one chief told me that the money we were spending for the area we were covering and the number of calls we were having was a fiscally responsible way to handle it. Not one suggested that starting an ambulance service with another volunteer community was a very smart idea. In fact, those said that it would probably fail because it's too expensive, it's hard to keep manpower, and it's a really tough situation to handle. It's getting harder and harder for them. And certainly, one chief in a very large fire protection district in Lake County told me that if he had the opportunity to do what we were doing or could do with Lake Forest and Libertyville, he would do it in a heartbeat. I know that we debated this issue for a long time, and instead of debating it with numbers and figures and research, we debated it on an emotional level. And I understand the emotional end of it. But that's not a reason to continue something that cannot sustain itself and was not providing us with the best possible services that we could get. I will leave this board with the coverage for Rockland Fire Protection District with 2 professional full-time fire departments in an extremely solid financial position, and with the availability of a building to hold their meetings and have office space. I don't think it can get much better than that. I would certainly hope that the incoming board would put their emotions aside and realize their fiscal and ethical responsibilities to run this district. You do it wisely and responsibly, and I think this district can survive for many, many years to come. That's all I have to say.
Carl, do you have anything? Okay.
Can I say something?
You may.
I never talk at these things, but I want to thank the board, Carl, for all your help and guidance through this. In the beginning, I wasn't sure if this was a smart choice either to consolidate, but looking at the numbers, I've been crunching numbers for 30 years. It's probably one of the better things they've done. I might have wrote the contract a little different, maybe a VOC in there, but I think it's gonna be good for the community. If you look at the numbers, it'll be very good for you guys. And Amy, it's not, I don't know who's taken over this, but you won't need a treasurer. The duties have gone down significantly since the purchase of the building and deletion of the firefighters. But Don Russ had a lot to say in his speech, and that has been on videotape, I think, from the debate, and I really listened to what he has to say because he had some really good pointers and interesting facts that will help you with the positions. So, good luck, guys.
Okay, moving on to the Chiefs report. Chiefs, what do you got to report?
All right, Matt Pennard from Lake Forest Fire Department. Chief Sievert sends his regards. He had some new hire interviews he had to attend this evening, or candidate interviews. For the month of April, we're showing 13 total calls in Knollwood. 9 of those were EMS calls, 3 of them were false fire alarms, and we had 1 vehicle fire. So that brings for the year a total of 48 calls. And any other questions for me that I'll do my best to answer?
The only question I would have is, and I guess this is posed to both of you, I assume that you're continuing to work out any bugs and everything seems to be, from my conversation with the chiefs, running pretty smoothly now as far as the calls and stuff go?
Yeah, well, there's one other thing on here, yeah.
Okay.
On my report, I don't know if it's on the Libertyville, but our report, we went to Libertyville's district twice to assist them in the month of April.
Okay.
I know historically they've come to help us a lot more, but we've kind of ironed out some of the kinks as far as getting the dispatch at the same time, and it's definitely worked out better. So I think it's, the biggest challenge I think we're still facing is cell phones.
Right.
You know, if they catch the North Chicago cell tower, it goes to North Chicago. If they catch but I think that's an issue countywide. But it definitely affects us here. I know it probably affects Libertyville, depending if they're near their borders as well. But I see the frustration. I've had friends and colleagues that have dialed 911 on their cell phones and been frustrated because they're telling the operators, I know I need this dispatch center, and they still get rerouted to the wrong dispatch center. So I know it's a frustration for residents who call, and I'm sure it's a frustration for visitors, but I can't take much solace in the fact that it happens everywhere. But that's one thing I think as a county we need to figure out with the cell companies how to route those better.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if we don't need to continue to spread the word that, you know, if they can program their phones for the dispatch center that they need to reach, rather than go through 911, things would work a lot smoother.
Yeah,
But it's
I
getting
know it
that
seems
word
silly.
out.
It feels backwards. It feels
Right.
like going back to pre-911 days and dialing your.
Well, there's that, and the other thing too is, as you guys continue to meet with the new board, when they, my aunt has one of the emergency medical devices, and I don't have the company off the top of my head, but be that as it may, I'm happy to share it. We made sure that they called the direct number. And they have a test system on most of these now, and I'm actually going to get my mother set up as well, and she would be calling Lake Forest, where my aunt calls Libertyville. And I just think that maybe even a postcard sent out by the new board saying, you know, if you have a medical alert or whatever, please confirm with them that with the, you know, that when you push it, that it goes to the proper dispatch center.
I would even recommend that the resident has a private alarm system, burglar or fire alarm, that they make sure that the number for the fire dispatch is the correct number.
So, interesting you say that. I had quite a conversation with ADT, which didn't go well. 4 or 5 people down the road, they still indicated to me that the number that they wanted to call was 549-5200, and I said, that's county dispatch. I said, for a fire call, somebody calls and says, I have a fire, you know, and I went through supervisor upon supervisor, and at one point they actually told me they weren't allowed to give me the number that they called. And I said, well, that doesn't quite make sense. So I think that's going to be an ongoing problem, but I think that it should be continued to note to people that have alarms and have medical alerts that there is a little bit of due diligence they have to do to get it to go the right way. Libertyville, what have you got?
Ken Comer with Libertyville Fire, Chief Carney's out of town tonight. We had 8 calls in the month of April. We had 1 fire call. Unfortunately, Chief Carney didn't expand to me or explain to me what that was. 4 rescue calls, 2 service calls, and 1 good intent call or canceled en route for a total date. So far this year, we've responded 25 times to the Knollwood district. And we've also 4 mutual aid or automatic assist to Lake Forest in the month of April.
And everything's going well from your guys' end as
Yes,
well?
Yes.
Outstanding. Okay, chiefs, thanks very much. Discussion action regarding the sale of Rockland Fire Protection District. Brian, do you have any updates?
No, I've heard, thank you. I've heard nothing from Mr. Klugian,
Okay.
whatever his name. I've heard nothing. After the meeting last Monday, I gave him, in fact, twice, I made sure he had my card, and I said, have your attorney contact me, but I've heard nothing, so.
Okay. Well, that again will be up to the next board to follow up and see if he is indeed going to follow through with that contract. Anybody else have any other items regarding the sale of the building? No? Okay, attorney's report.
General Assembly's in session, but I mean, if I say there's a number of bills that are kind of making their way through, some of them have a lot of attention, none of them really affect Rockland. Probably the biggest one that's got everybody's hair on fire is the secondary employment bill, where if you're a fire district and you hire in a part-time capacity a person who's a full-time firefighter elsewhere, there's compensations, there's going to be some form of compensation. It's still working its way through. But that has a number of the smaller departments excited. But again, you can have so it's not yours. Other than that, there's some other bills. We haven't heard anything on the PTEL bills. There's 4 PTEL bills that are being floated. 3 of them talk about holding the 2019 tax level at 0% increase. One of them suggests a decrease in the tax revenue for 2019. But we're not as confident that those will pass as we are about the secondary employment bill. But, this is life. We'll see what happens. If I hear anything more, I'll let the board, whoever the board may be, we'll let the board know.
Sounds good. Okay, treasurer's report. Madam Treasurer.
Lake Forest Bank and Trust assets, capital $36,458.15. Lake Forest Bank and Trust checking, $293,231.57. Lake Forest Bank and Trust Reserve, $274,361.50 for total assets of $604,051.22. Budget tracking, not much budget,
And not much tracking.
not much tracking.
Okay. May I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report as presented?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Grum, second by Snowden. Roll call vote. Trustee Snowden.
Aye.
Trustee Grum.
Aye.
Trustee Rogers, aye. Approval of outstanding invoices.
Okay, North Shore Gas,
You don't need to read them all.
all right.
Trustees have any questions on any of the invoices?
No.
Trustee
Anything there?
Snowden?
Oh, and I just realized the Comcast for $12, that's
That's
got,
the cable, we
yeah,
need
we
to cut
gotta,
it,
gotta cancel that.
Yeah.
I'll call them tomorrow.
okay.
Okay.
$19,353.89.
May I have a motion to approve the outstanding invoices in the amount of $19,353.89?
So,
Moved by Snowden, second by Grum. Roll call vote. Trustee Snowden.
aye.
Trustee Grum. Aye. Trustee Rogers, aye. Discussion and action on May 20th meeting agenda.
We have an agenda, I passed it, here it is. You can pass this out. This is what I propose that we put out. Of course, it could be changed, but I thought, well, as long as we got it, let's get it done, we can get it up and posted tonight. Marcia, I'll give you some copies of this afterwards, but at least we've got something, just something to put up there. better keep.
Anybody have any comments on it, Carl?
A bunch of-
Bob?
I mean, a lot of it is just work that I need to do to help the new board establish itself.
Correct.
It's very pro forma, but important nonetheless. I'll have the oaths of office to administer, so we can do that. In fact, I've already kind of got them done.
But you don't really need a motion to approve this, Bob? You just-
No, I just wanted to give it to you so, the board could say, here's, and then we can post it tonight, so we don't have to worry about the crazy 48-hour rule. We'll meet the 48-hour rule.
All good with that? Trustee Grum, all good with that? Sounds good. Unless there's any other comments, I would make a motion to adjourn at 5:40 PM.
I will make that motion. I'll second it.
Motion by Grum, second by Snowden, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
I just wanted to give
the press
You want some
the
signatures?
press guy. Put you in your pigeonhole there.
13th for April, 48 for the year. And then the two fires, one was the
It was unexpected.
McCormick's and then this one.
Very unexpected. Thank you.
Oh, has it? I guess I'm not.